welcome back to another fabulous channel. I'm Jay from Jay's Books Corner. Today we're talking about my May wrap-up. I read 10 books this month. 10 books. I'm really putting in quotations. I think you can count 8 of these as like full reads. Full read. I read the words on all of them, but the actual quotation of a book, a bit more questionable. But that being said though, I'm gonna go ahead and jump into them in the order I read them. I actually own all of them except the first one, which is so crazy to me. The first one is The Law of the Skies. I think it's what it's called. I couldn't tell you who it's by. It was translated. This has a relatively good Rotten Tomatoes score to the point where I'm like, I wonder if the original version is better. This is, what is it pitched as? Winnie the Pooh meets the Blair Witch Project? It's about a group of 12 boys. I think it's 12 boys who are in like first grade, go into the woods with 3 counselors. A lot of horrible shit starts to happen to them. And Stephanie was written over in a different country, and the people who adapted it was probably in London. And I could understand the Winnie the Pooh vibes, and also slightly understood the other vibes as well. It's a shorter novel. I think it's like 180 pages or so. I guess my biggest issue was both the language, the characters, with the whole thing. I didn't like any of it. I gave it like a 1.5 stars. I was really disappointed with it, and I was really looking forward to it too. It's basically like an offshoot of The Troop, and yet The Troop was done so much better. If you like The Troop and you're interested in it, I guess give it a good old whirl. I won't lie, probably like 20% of the novel takes place with a short story that does become relatively important. I'm going to say the word relative in this case to the plot, but it's not my favorite thing in the world. I don't think it will make the worst of my list or the most disappointing of my list when we get to the end of the year. I don't even think I'll remember that I read it. It's just a 1.5 is all I got. I have much more stronger opinion about when I read at the very beginning of the month. Alright, let's go ahead and get started with the rest of the month. First, we're going to talk about is About Us, Songbirds and Snakes by Susan Collins. I read the entire Hunger Games saga during the month of May, and it was a bad idea, but I read it. It'll be in a video coming to you shortly. I had lots of thoughts and hands on it, so get ready for that. About Us, Songbirds and Snakes is the prequel. I read it first because it was the prequel. I ended up not sticking true to what I originally had set out for because About Us, Songbirds and Snakes made me so just mad like it did the first time. I think I'm walking out with like a 2.75. The writing here is fine, yet I still think the Hunger Games is written better. I think it's overwritten. I think that's me. I also, and I'll make this same opinion again with the Hunger Games, I think the game starts too soon here and we don't have enough time to enjoy the build-up. And then once the games start, I don't think Suzanne knew what to do with the entire bit of the time. Plus, she was trying to throw in so many other references throughout the rest of the book that I just don't think everything worked for me. I think it's going to be a really good movie though, so I am looking forward to the film when it comes out in November, just because even though it didn't work as a book, the Hunger Games are a great example of sometimes it works better in a different medium. So we'll get into that when we talk about the Hunger Games, the rest of the trilogy. When I finished The Ballad, Summers and Snakes, that took 2 weeks to read. I was like, I need something that's going to be much quicker than I want to read, and that would be, of course, good old Chain of Iron. Chain of Iron actually ended up being a slight disappointment for me. It went down a little bit. So the original rating I gave it was a 5. I think in my vlog I was like, it's not a perfect 5, but I think Goodreads is going to get a 5. And Goodreads did. The Reason No Longer has a 5. This is a 4.5 in my opinion, and it deserved a 4 because it fell less than a 4.75. And when I give a book a 4.75, I tend to round up on Goodreads to a 5. That being said, this is the second book in the Last Hour series, which is the newest series written by Kendra Clare that just ended earlier this month. I'm about to start Chain of Thorns. I'm literally starting it today. I'm super duper excited about it. Will either be the last book, depending on how much I love it. Maybe I'll read 10 hours of it today. Highly doubt it. It will probably be the first book I finish in June. Is my best. I love the story. This is the second book syndrome. I'm really curious when I read TMI again, the Mortal Instruments, in case you guys are not familiar with the acronym, if I'm going to have a similar experience. I didn't even have the experience with Dark Artifice when I read it the first time, that I once ever thought the second book was the second book syndrome in Kendra Clare series. In Front of Devices, I had a very similar gut reaction to Clockwork Prince. This feels very much like that. Much better, very much better book. Do not get me wrong. Superior. On reread, it was slightly boring because I knew it was going to happen, and this is one of those books that was really shocking the first time I read it. Part of the reason why I got a 5 was because it just kept throwing twists and turns in my face that I loved and adored in perfect Kendra Clare fashion, that like I just remembered them so well. And I think part of the reason why I didn't like Chain of Gold, one, I didn't really know the characters at that point when I read Chain of Gold, but the reason why Chain of Gold got bumped up like a 1.5 stars, I think they're level now, I think they're both like a 4.5, is because one, this book helped so much, but Chain of Gold, there was so much of I didn't remember because I just blocked it because I didn't care for it. Very different experiences. Didn't harm it, but it didn't make it a 5, which did kind of suck. I won't lie. That is the last of the big. I read 2 big books beginning of this month. We'll see if reading another first big book will harm my experience. I don't think it will. I think it'll be fine. Then all the rest of the stuff I read the very end of May because I was like, I cannot lock into this. Wrapping up 3 books. Jacob, don't do that. I was like, okay, fine. Let's get our thinking cap on. Let's get shit done. And I got shit done. First thing first, I did read the Buffy Vampire Slayer Sunnydale High School. This is the first of 2 books that I don't know if you can count as a wrap-up. It's perfect. It's everything. It's really funny, especially if you know the entire TV show, or the first 3 seasons, because this came out with the 3rd season as merch that Warner Brothers produced. It's really good if you're familiar with the concept. I'm not talking about hold on. So I'm not so much talking about this stuff. I'm more talking about the people who they actually got to write about all the different stuff. There's references to people who died in the clubs or the significance of them, with some photos obviously showcasing why they are being mentioned. The only thing I think I take away from it is the fact that which one is it? I think it's Angel. Yeah, Angel has a few comments throughout the actual book past this first reference, and I just, especially as an older age, I just don't think he'd write in Buffy's yearbook like he did. That's where I'm at, because supposedly Buffy's lost yearbook. Because if you've seen the TV show, you understand what that means. Alright, with that being said, it doesn't really count. I didn't rate it, but it's on my Goodreads. Because I did read it. I read every word, and I enjoyed it. And I laughed, and it was a good time. And then I read The Hunger Games by Susan Collins. Oh, let's talk about The Hunger Games by Susan Collins for a minute. This was the first reread that I read in a long time, outside of big series that I love and adore, that was not a 1 or a 2. So it automatically gets props, right? It's actually a 4, which is good. The whole book was super enjoyable. I just think, once again, same case here, I feel like the opening is a little too short for my liking and the games take a little too long. I think if the games were a bit shorter and there's a bit more of a mixture between training and different things, I feel like it all just happened so fast that it became a little bit unbelievable in my opinion, even though, it's not a game, so, how believable can you get? Today's society, really believable, but, that's besides the point. I think taking that into, account when talking about the Hunger Games, that's where I'm at, is that I just feel like it went by a little too fast, and so I didn't get a perfect score. It's definitely, since I finished the trilogy, the best one still, so good for it for being Crown Jewel. Also, Susan Collins, I have a bone to pick with you. Moving on, I picked up Catching Fire immediately, because, Hunger Games ends on a cliffhanger, and I very much remember Catching Fire, but I didn't remember it in book form. I remembered it in movie form. Fun fact, they're practically identical, outside of, the dumb scenes. They're practically, they hit every mark. What a good adaptation. With that being said, though, what an okay book. This is the opposite effect. I felt like the game started too soon in this, or it started too late, and there's too much lull time. What makes the movie better is the lull time is actually more interesting, and the few changes they make were more interesting. So ultimately, this was a better experience in my opinion. The movie was over the book. This got a 3.5 for me. And then I read Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Volume 6, and I'm gonna run through the short stories real fast so you guys can understand the rating, and then we'll move on from it. If you don't care about the short stories rating in overall, I'll tell you right away. Overall, it got a 2.5, and I'm gonna explain why. But if you're a big Buffy fan and you're interested in reading any of these, or Volume 6, I guess, because you don't have to read them in order, they're just short story collections, I'm gonna tell you my favorite ones I recommend and the ones I don't. But if you don't care about that at all, move over until you see this book, and then you're all good to go. Go ahead and get into it, guys. I'm going to talk relatively fast about them, but I'm going to go in order of releasing. So, City of Despair, I did not like. City of Despair, this was a Buffy and Angel crossover, and I can't remember if they said this was the first one or the other one was, and I don't like it when we're talking about, this is in timeline with the television show. I think that's important to know right off the bat. If you're reading the Boom comics, don't read this. It has nothing to do with this. If you're reading season 8 onward, and you're like, oh, is this a part of that? It's not. All the ominous versions were written as more short stories that were published in journals and things along those lines, or issues alone when Dark House started publishing them and stuff like that, and they decided to combine them all together, and there's 6 or 7 of these that were written to the course of the Buffy Vampire Slayer TV show history. So these ones take place between season 4, 5, and Angel season 1, and one short story, if you have no context to it, it's gonna be really confusing, that takes place in season 7, I think. And that's important. And I think the Angel and Buffy crossover, there's 2 in this one, are a bit too outlandish for the television show's sake, and I think that's the part that really made me mad and didn't really work for me. So let's go ahead and jump into it. City of Despair is that reason. So that's the first one. The second one is Jonathan, codenamed Comrades. Giles Beyond the Pale is a Giles one-off. It's where he goes back to London. It talks about his past with a little bit of future stuff. I just don't care for Giles one-offs. I never have in all my rereads or all my reads of Buffy. I consume as much Buffy content as I possibly can, and so I read a lot of one-offs and little short stories here or there, and I've never liked the Giles one. This was no different. different. So if you like Giles ones, I do recommend. And then we get to the one that I think I hate the most. And there's One Small Promise. We're going to One Small Promise because they do have an author's note in the beginning. I'm sure it's in all of them. In this author note, they talked very specifically about One Small Promise, where they wanted to make it very Buffy and Riley centric to add more character to Riley, because Riley was a fan hated character. I didn't mind Riley the first few watches of Buffy. I'm not gonna lie to you. I think his character was really interesting and I really did like him. As I've gotten older, I've seen Buffy 46,000 times. I hate Riley. I don't like Riley until season 8, which is a comic book assignment connected to this thing. And they make his character 10 times worse with this one shot. If you even don't like the mention of Riley, oh, skip it. It's not worth your time, I promise. Punish Me with Kisses took the same extent of the first one. It just got a little too big for the scope that I just don't think it's very realistic, but I like the artwork change. It's the only one in the book, outside a little demonology thing at the very end, that has an artwork change, and so that's the only good thing I can say for it. Past Lives falls under the same category of the first one. It's another Buffy and Angel crossover and deals with a whole new character from the Counselor that doesn't make sense and doesn't work with the logic in the mythology of Buffy, especially in this timeline, and it just doesn't fit with the scope of it. The bigger things end up happening with comic books because they can draw things instead of produce them on for television. The issue being here with season 8 and season 9 and things like that, they already they made the scope so much bigger with season 8, and they did it slowly and great, and they really built off of that finale. And that's the reason why Past Lives doesn't work for me, is that the scope got too big. Out of the Woodwork, looks like I like the artwork. Oh no, I am wrong. Out of the Woodwork, so I must have liked the Will and Tara one, the other one. Out of the Woodwork is the one that I felt was a little too ambitious for me. They had their own version of the Battle of the Hellmouth at the very end, and I didn't think it worked. Okay, so that's where we're at. Then we have Will and Tara. This is the only one written by a cast member. Amber Benson came and wrote for them for Wanna Be, I believe. I don't know how to pronounce it. I do recommend it. I think it's a little outlandish for Will and Tara, but it is very much more magic focused, and they're practically the main characters. Buffy's only in a few different frames, so I do recommend it in case you're big fans of Will and Tara. But also, I've been big fans of Amber Benson's writing for a while now, as anytime Tara got brought in for future writing or past stories, they tend to bring her in because she is a writer on the side. It's always good. And then False Memories is what closes it, and I don't mind False Memories. False Memories is actually really, really interesting. It's probably the only one I recommend the most because it does put Dawn in past memories and starts the thread of Buffy in season 5. This is before she realizes who Dawn is. The name itself is a spoiler, but if you don't know it, you don't know it. I'm not going to talk spoilers for Buffy here, so no worries. But the thing that happens with Dawn, it explores even further here with memories. And if you guys have any clue what that is, it was a good time. Alright, moving on. Living Vampire Slayer, New School Nightmare, which is a middle grade Buffy comic book mixed with other media. Throughout, it's a diary, there's text, there's a whole bunch of other shit outside of the comic book, and I did not like it. If it wasn't for it being okayly written, it would have got a 1. I got a 2 instead. Buffy's in middle school. They changed the entire mythology. I already ranted about it. I'm done ranting. I just didn't like it. It was a 2. This is a big ass no for me. Alright, let's talk about Mockingjay for a minute by Suzanne Cullen. I talk about it really in depth in that video, so I'm just going to briefly mention that I gave this a 3? I think we're going with a 3. For my final rating, I just finished it 20 minutes ago. I think we're going with a 3. I really hated the epilogue. I think it made me really uncomfortable, just like it always does. And this is another moment of where, god damn it, Suzanne, you spent too much time in District 13 and not enough time in the Capitol. And I understand the agenda, but did you have to push so hard for it? I don't know. It just didn't work for me. You know. If you don't know, it's fine. I get to watch the movies for Mockingjay, but I can already tell you this much. They're probably superior. It's just the way it's been, so. And lastly, I guess it goes before, because I read this last night. My first read. I had to read it 4 times, I think. 3 times in my brain to really understand it. But I'm reading the Buffy the Vampire Slayer Tarot card deck. It's a guidebook. There's book on that word. This is 126 pages as well, so I'm counting it. Is it really, really small pages where it just kind of explains some things? For sure. Will I be using it when I do my tarot starting in June? Of course. But don't judge me. Don't hate me for it. It's just what's going to happen. I really liked it. It just goes with my tarot deck. And I'm experiencing tarot for the first time. Exploring the cards and stuff in a video. I don't know if it'll ever make the light of day because I'm not really liking how it's going. I'm not rating it. But it's on my Goodreads. Okay? Sue me. Alright. That being said, that's the books that I read in the month of May. Let me know what you guys read. Let me know your guys' least favorite and like favorite. My least favorite, I read a lot of rereads. I don't have one outside of it, so we're just gonna go. My least favorite is definitely the first book I read, even though I read books in here I didn't really like. Like I guess this could also be a least favorite, but that one I remember really pissed me off, the birds one. And then Chain of Iron is probably my favorite one, not shockingly, walking out of this. That's all I got for you. I'll tell you guys all next time. Thank you guys so much for watching, and goodbye.